next hour is Graham Hancock. He is an author of the major international best-selling books, The Sign and the Seal, Fingerprints of the Gods, and Heaven's Mirror. His books have sold more than 5 million copies worldwide and have been translated into 27 languages. His public lectures, radio, and TV appearances, including 2 major TV series for Channel 4 in the UK and the Learning Channel in the United States called Quest for the Lost Civilization and Flooded Kingdoms of the Ice Age, have put his ideas before audiences of tens of millions of people. He has become recognized as an unconventional thinker who raises controversial questions about humanity's past. While researching his book Supernatural, Graham traveled to the Amazon to drink the visionary brew called ayahuasca, otherwise known as the Vine of Souls, used by shamans for more than 4,000 years. It was his experiences with the vine that led to his latest work called Entangled, written with the same page-turning appeal that has made his nonfiction books so popular. Entangled is his first fiction novel. It tells the story of a supernatural battle of good against evil fought out across the dimensions of time on the human plane. Tonight, Graham joins me to discuss the science behind his latest book, Entangled. We're going to be talking unconsciousness, quantum physics, parallel realms, time travel, telepathy, DMT, ayahuasca, and more. Welcome, Graham. I understand that you're on a U.S. tour now. You're actually in the United States.
That's right, Hillary. Thank you so much for having me on your show. And I'm in the wilds of southern Utah at the moment in canyon country, surrounded by just an unbelievable, vast expanse of magnificence. It's wonderful down here.
It's certainly great to have you here, and I'm so happy that you have made my show and you're joining me and my listeners as a stop on your tour. And I'm very excited. I have some wonderful questions for you tonight. And the content of the book was fascinating, and I have to say that, I'm familiar with your work as nonfiction, and I'm very curious, and I'd like to start the hour off with what it was like for you as an author to switch from writing nonfiction to fiction novels.
It was actually a wonderful liberation for me to switch to fiction and to set the nonfiction aside. For the last 20 plus years, I have definitely walked the walk as well as talked the talk in terms of bringing a different light on some of the mysteries of the human past. And my books, although they are presenting a radical alternative view of history, have been thoroughly and massively documented. I felt that was, I knew that I was taking on the mainstream when I wrote books like Fingerprints of the Gods or Underworld, and I knew that in order to do that, I had to fight them on their own territory, and that meant thoroughly investigated and fact-supported material. So enter my office any day when I'm writing nonfiction, and you're going to find, 100 books strewn around the floor and all over my desk, little yellow tags pasted to pages here and there. I'm constantly grinding facts. I've long ago learned that if you don't write down the footnotes at the very moment that you've got that reference, you can never ever find it again. And so I've been writing, very, very long, very thoroughly documented books, sometimes running to 800 pages, sometimes with 1,500 footnotes in them. And particularly in the latter years, I feel that I've been writing defensively rather than offensively. When I started out with Fingerprints of the Gods, I didn't really care at all what the academics thought. But having been the victim of some academic dirty tricks over a number of years, I rapidly learned that it is important to take account of what they think. And so I was building, really bulletproofing my arguments against all kinds of potential criticisms, and this just got worse and worse as I entered deeper and deeper into this minefield. So it was a great liberation for me to set all that aside, to write a novel, a fantasy adventure novel, a fast-moving story, but also to weave into it a whole range of extraordinary ideas, perhaps too extraordinary to be presented as nonfiction. Our society does give a license to fiction and to science fiction to go where the scientists themselves dare not go.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no danger of the academics and their friends in the media ganging up on me on this one and saying that I'm somehow misrepresenting the past because I don't take their point of view, because I can simply tell them, relax, guys, it's just fantasy. So yes, it's been a fantastic liberation. The writing process has been different, slower. I write faster when I'm writing nonfiction, and I've felt from the beginning that I was mining out of myself a vast amount of material that had been downloaded to me. As you rightly said, it was my encounters with the Vine of Souls, with ayahuasca, that led me on this new creative path.
Would you care to share what your experience was like with that? I'm very curious.
Right. Well, ayahuasca, for those of your listeners who don't know, is a mysterious brew. It contains, and the active ingredient is dimethyltryptamine, DMT, which of course is a Schedule 1 illegal drug in the United States. And the DMT in ayahuasca is consumed in a brew, in a beverage. And normally, DMT is not orally active. In scientific studies, when they want to work with human volunteers and DMT, they give them it by intravenous infusion. Otherwise, DMT can be smoked, and its effects felt very quickly. But for DMT to be orally active is most unusual, and the shamans of the Amazon have achieved oral activity for DMT by mixing the leaves that contain the DMT with another plant, which is the Vine of Souls, which is ayahuasca, and which happens to contain a monoamine oxidase inhibitor. You see, DMT is normally switched off by an enzyme in our stomachs called monoamine oxidase, but this other element of the brew switches off that enzyme and allows the DMT to be absorbed orally and facilitates a long and thought-provoking journey that can last up to 4 hours at a time. It's a difficult thing to drink, ayahuasca. Nobody would ever consider doing this for recreation. It does give you vomiting. It does give you diarrhea. It's not for nothing that it's called the purge in the Amazon. But through these uncomfortable physical effects, which you just have to learn to deal with, extraordinary effects at the psychic level are taking place. It's often said in the Amazon that ayahuasca is a school, and that Mother Ayahuasca, or Our Lady of the Forest, as she's personified in the Amazon, is a teacher. This is one of the curious things. It's really important to listen to what the shamans say, because the shamans in the Amazon have been working with ayahuasca for thousands and thousands of years, and they all agree that an intelligent being lies behind this brew, that she has used human ingenuity to put together this mysterious brew in order to contact human consciousness, to reach us on the material plane in which we live. And these very sophisticated ideas are universally found amongst shamans in the Amazon. They see her as a female presence. Often she appears in the form of a gigantic serpent, sometimes a jaguar, sometimes a human woman, and always what she's doing is teaching and guiding you on a path that ultimately, though it may be difficult, will be helpful to you. So often in ayahuasca experiences, one undergoes personal revelations. You begin to examine your own behavior, to look at ways in which you might be toxic or unhelpful to others, and to realize that you have been so. And it fills you with a motive to clean up your act and to be a better, more nurturing, more loving human being. That's not such an easy thing to be. A lifetime of bad habits is very difficult to break. But ayahuasca gives you a very strong incentive to improve yourself as a human being. And beyond that, and this seems to be work that ayahuasca needs to do with us to get to the next level, there are extraordinary visions and encounters with intelligent entities, including Mother Ayahuasca herself, and teachings and healings and lessons, and the feeling of being plunged into a seamlessly convincing parallel universe is shared by virtually everyone who's worked patiently with ayahuasca and gone back for more than just one or two sessions.
Now, I find it interesting, Graham, that you say that you relate this plant to a woman. And I'm curious if you feel that this, you hear a lot about divine feminine consciousness coming back at this point in time. If you feel that this is what the ancients were always in touch with, that we have, in a sense, lost touch with.
We've lost it. All the shamans in the Amazon agree. The sickness of our society is that we've severed our connection with spirit. And ayahuasca is the divine feminine. She's the mother goddess of this planet. She's the personification of everything that is strong and true and beautiful and deep about the sacred female. This is what ayahuasca is. She's a tough teacher. It's love that she brings, but it's tough love. Being shown the truth about yourself is not easy. But on the wings of that, she also brings incredible creative gifts. I know artists working in the United States today, for example, Alex and Alison Gray up at the Chapel of Sacred Mirrors in upstate New York. For example, Martina Hoffman and Robert Venosa in Boulder, Colorado, who have worked with ayahuasca down in the Amazon and who have produced extraordinary transformative works of art as a result of the visions that they have seen, and who are absolutely convinced and certain, as I am, that ayahuasca has played a positive and nurturing role in their lives. I know of geneticists who've gone down to the Amazon to drink ayahuasca and have returned with extraordinary insights into the nature of DNA itself. And in my case, I'm not a geneticist and I'm not an artist, but my medium is words. I'm a writer. My narrative gifts had been harnessed to nonfiction. But as a result of a series of transformative visions with ayahuasca in 2006, I was steered very firmly in the direction of fiction and this novel, Entangled, that I've now published.
And so my next question was for you: how did this experience with ayahuasca change or affect your professional direction? Where did you feel a significant change?
Yes, it's massively changed and affected my professional direction as a writer, just as it has the direction of many other serious people who've worked with ayahuasca. What happens with ayahuasca? I've now had, I guess, 33 or 34 sessions with ayahuasca since 2003. What happens with ayahuasca is the setting in which you consume the brew is extremely important, and best for the ceremony to be led by an experienced shaman. An experienced shaman doesn't have to be a Native American Indian from the Amazon. Many Westerners now have gone down to sit at the feet of the shamans of the Amazon and learn their skills, and are bringing ayahuasca back to the West. But the setting is extremely important, and the sense of being in the hands of someone who knows what he or she is doing is extremely important, because when you open the door to the spirit world, and I have no doubt that that's what ayahuasca is doing, you are not only opening the door to good entities and to entities of light, there are dark entities on the other side too. And it's important to protect the space, and this is what experienced shamans are very good at doing. The next thing it's important to do, and directly relevant to your question, is it's important to set an intent before the session. It's okay to go into the session and just say, Mother Ayahuasca, show me what I need to know. But it's often helpful to say, this is an area of my life that I want to explore at the moment. Please help me with it. And that's what I did back in 2006. I went down to Brazil for 5 sessions of ayahuasca over a period of 2 weeks. And my intent was to be could I write a novel? And what would the story be? And over these 5 sessions, in a series of overwhelming visions, I was shown a number of, at a fully conscious level, a number of key ingredients of the story I eventually wrote. That there would be 2 young women who were the heroines of the story. One would live in the Stone Age, and I set her time period as 24,000 years ago. And one would live today in modern United States. I set her in Los Angeles in the 21st century. Her name is Leonie. The ancient character's name is Rhea. I was led to understand that time is not what it seems, that it's not a straight line. It's not an arrow going from past through present to future. That's just an illusion that we have about time because we're so deeply entrapped in the material realm. But that rather time is a series of cycles and spirals that intersect and cross one another in enormously complex tangles and knots, and that it is possible for influences in time to flow back from the present into the past, just as much as we normally think of them flowing from the past into the present and into the future. So my 2 time frames, 24,000 years ago and today, could coexist simultaneously. How would my 2 characters get into contact with one another? I was shown that there was a powerful supernatural female presence. I'm certain Mother Ayahuasca herself, who I called the Blue Angel in the novel, who is doing battle with a demon who seeks to mislead the human race, to misdirect us, to take us off our true path, to cause us never to achieve our potential. Now, the Blue Angel cannot intervene directly on the material plane. The only way that she can intervene on the material plane is through human consciousness, guiding people to take the necessary choices, to take the necessary risks, to fight the battles that have to be fought, to bring this demon down. And the jeopardy of the story, and again I was shown this in the visions, concerns our human cousins, the Neanderthals, who have always been depicted as brutish and thuggish and ignorant and lacking in creativity or spirituality, but who I was shown were filled with love and joy and light, were creatures of peace and compassion, nurturing, caring, beautiful creatures, not interested in the manipulation of the material world in the way that we are, but psychically enormously powerful and directing their powers into healing and into telepathic contact. And the mission of the demon would be to persuade people in the Stone Age to exterminate the Neanderthals so that he could gain the psychic charge necessary to manifest fully in physical form in the 21st century and weave the doom of all mankind. So my 2 young characters, one in the 21st century, one in the Stone Age, get into contact with one another through the machinations of the Blue Angel by means of altered states of consciousness. In one case by a near-death experience, then by the use of psilocybin mushrooms, by the use of DMT, and by the use of ayahuasca. These techniques, these methods bring one out of the body and into the realm of spirit. And once in the realm of spirit, and quantum physicists would call that a parallel universe or a parallel dimension, then it becomes possible to move not only freely through space, but also freely through time. And the mission of these 2 young women would be to do battle on the human plane with this demonic force and not allow it to achieve its goals, and specifically not allow it to mislead human beings to wipe out the Neanderthals. This is the essence of the plot, and it was shown to me in great detail in a series of visions. But I also downloaded a whole lot more, not at the conscious level, but at an unconscious level, which began to come out with a very clear flow, almost as though I were guided, almost as though I were channeling, and I've never had anything to do with channeling in my whole life, almost as though I were channeling the story from a deeper realm. There was a very strange and mysterious process and a transformative process for me as a writer to move so definitively away from the disciplines and the rigors of nonfiction and find myself in an area of new disciplines and new rigors, because the one thing that you absolutely have to do as a novelist is tell a story that people want to read. It has to be page-turning. It has to be gripping. Otherwise, you don't get past first base.
We're just coming up to break, so just for the webpage, you can go to capricornradio.com for the free archives and capricornmembers.com for the HD TV and MP3 archives. But for now, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back in just a moment. There is something majestic in the land of Ireland. This is known the world over. The Celtic Irish are descendants of the Tuatha De Danann, a mysterious, supernatural race of gods written about in ancient Irish Gaelic texts. This is the basis for all Irish mythology, and our megalithic ancestors are interlinked with these peoples. You have a chance to come and see these monuments and temples for yourself. The megalithic landscape is rich in the realms of myth, legend and wisdom. Come see all this on the most spectacular Sacred Sites tour in March 2016. The Sacred Sites and Equinox tour is not to be missed. Tour highlights include Grillen of Aillock Observatory, the Giant's Ring Henge and Dolmen, St. Patrick's Day Special at St. Patrick's Ancient Chair, March 17th, Knockmany Passage Tomb linked to the Queen Maeve with special access, Beemore Temple Complex, Dunluce Castle, the Giant's Causeway, Beltany Stone Circle, Kilclooney Dolmen, and the Loughcrew Equinox Event Alignment. Of course, we will see the famous tombs of Newgrange, Noath and Doath, also Fornox Rock Art and Shamanic Chamber, Tara Hill Complex, and we're going to finish at the Tuatha De Danann's origins in the northwest of Ireland at Carrowkeel, dated 3500 BC, and the famous Carrowmore 5000 BC complex. Check out all the full itinerary on the tours events page for more details at jamesswagger.com. Welcome back to Capricorn Radio. This is your host James, and don't forget to check out the archives at capricornmembers.com. You can subscribe for membership, doing a lifetime membership deal at the moment. And of course you can still check out the free archives at capricornradio.com. And then HDTV shows as well on the Capricorn members page. But for now...
Well, I have to imagine, Graham, that your readers would be very curious about what you would be writing in this kind of a book, simply because of the topics and subject matter of your past books, and because you have,
well,
I can't imagine you can go through this as a human being and not become extraordinarily evolved and enlightened because of your work and because of your research and because of the topics and subject matter that you go into. So as a reader, I would be extraordinarily curious and interested to see what you would bring forth as ideas in this kind of a book, because you don't have that rigid kind of box that you have to be put in when you write more of an academic book. So I think you did an extraordinary job. And as you were talking, the question came to me about time travel, and I'm very curious if you personally feel that time travel is more about consciousness going in back and forth in time, around in time, in circles into other places, and if that is really the true concept of time travel.
I do absolutely believe that, and have experience of that. And just before I address that in detail, I'd like to pick up on what you were saying about my readers, and thank you for feeling that as a reader of my other books, you would want to know what I'm doing in my first work of fiction. But I have to say I can't take that for granted at all. certainly the publishing industry has very much wanted to keep me as a non-fiction author, and as a reasonably lucrative non-fiction author, because I've published an awful lot of books and sold a lot of copies over the last 20 years. There was no desire on the part of mainstream publishers to allow me to publish a novel. All I received from publishers across the U.S. Regarding this novel was complete. They wouldn't even think about it. You're a non-fiction author. We don't want to publish you doing fiction. Nobody can make the transition from non-fiction to fiction. It's too difficult, and your readers want you to stay as a non-fiction author. So I'm appealing to my readers, because now I've not been able to find a major publisher for this book, but I have found a courageous, smaller, independent publisher, disinformation company, who were prepared to take the risk and who believe that the content of the book is important. And so what I'm saying to my readers is, give me a chance. I mean, you've read my nonfiction. Come and have a look at this and see what it is. Empower me, and don't allow the publishing industry to crush this new direction, which it very easily can do. So I take nothing for granted. I hope my readers will come with me. I hope they won't put me in the box that the publishing industry seems to want to put me in. Sorry if that's a bit of an impassioned appeal, but I felt really that mainstream publishing in the West right now is in a complete mess. I mean, they just don't know what they're doing. The editorial function is virtually lost. Publishers in the mainstream, the big name publishing houses, they're totally driven by marketing and sales and publicity. They're driven by the cult of celebrity. You just be a celebrity in some subject, and you can, the door is open to you. You can publish every book you want. But if you come to it not as a celebrity, and if you're not interested in trivia like shopping or footballers' wives, then the marketing people will tell you, oh, well, there's no market for this, and if there's no market for this, then why should we bother publishing it? So 3 cheers to the continuing survival of independent publishing in the United States.
Yes.
And I think we need a breakthrough in a number of fields. It's not right for this industry to be driven totally by marketing and sales. We are actually making books which are supposed to be creative works that push the boundaries and push the edges. And that's actually today in the world of publishing the very last thing you want to do, is to push the boundaries at all, because those marketing men, they will just say, no, impossible, we can't sell that. But anyway, I just had a little rant there, but excuse me for ranting when you were asking a much more interesting question about time.
Well, actually, I think it brings up a good point, because my question for you that I was going to get to later in the show had to do with technology, and has to do with why modern day humans are so addicted to technology. They don't want to sit down and read a book necessarily. They want to watch a video, a 10-minute segment on YouTube, or they want to, get on Facebook and whatever, they don't want to sit down with a book. And I think that that's a sad thing, because a book takes you on an experience, and it's an experience. It's an actual experience. And it also teaches you, in my opinion, how to move into the world of imagination and how to use that consciousness shift. There's a shift there that happens. But my question for you was, why are modern day humans so addicted to technology and so far away from exploring the abilities of consciousness without the use of technology? Because what we're talking here is exploring consciousness. And although we have the assistance of a plant, I'm wondering if plants, were plants to the ancients as technologies are to modern day human beings. I mean, do we really need these extras?
Spiritual technology. I would say that's what the plants are, as used by shamans. They're a spiritual technology. You're right, Hilary, to focus on the issue of consciousness and to contrast it with technology. Our society, I would say, is locked in a kind of war on consciousness. I think that if you just stand back and examine the whole thing rationally, you'll see that our society enormously favors one particular type of consciousness, which is the alert, problem-solving state of consciousness that's really useful if you're, I don't know, driving a car or flying an airplane or doing most of the routine, mundane tasks of science or fighting a war or being a trader on Wall Street. This is the state of consciousness that's useful for such activities. And our society sanctions another kind of consciousness, which is drunken oblivion, as an escape from the alert problem-solving state. But our society doesn't really recognize any other kinds of consciousness. If you want to insult somebody today, call them a dreamer. But in ancient times, dreams were undoubtedly regarded as a most valid and most important method of gaining essential knowledge, and so too were visions.
Certainly true. We have a question coming in from.
Shall I continue a little bit on that point, Hilary?
Oh, sure. Yeah, please.
Yeah. Because the situation is that we not only do we have a war on consciousness in our society that's trying to keep people focused into a very narrow band of consciousness and to deny the validity of all other kinds of consciousness, we also have the absolute round-the-clock blitz of reality TV. Now, reality TV is not illegal, but if you consider what it's doing to the brains of our children, perhaps it should be. It's dominating the scene in realms of consciousness. And our society also makes another, I believe, huge error. And that huge error is the belief, it's not a fact, although it's often presented as a fact, that our consciousness is generated by our brains the way a factory makes cars. That is, most mainstream materialists, reductionist, logical, positivist scientists will tell you that is a fact, that consciousness is just an accidental byproduct of brain activity, and that, when you switch off the brain, then consciousness just vanishes, that there's nothing more to it than that. But actually, there are no facts in this scientific position. It's a belief system of theirs. The evidence equally supports the proposition that the brain is a transceiver or receiver of consciousness that modulates consciousness onto the physical plane. And all the brain activity measurements that you get, which the scientists use to say that the brain is generating consciousness, work equally well to demonstrate that the brain is simply channeling or manifesting consciousness on the physical level. And furthermore, this explains all sorts of phenomena, such as near-death experiences, where the individual is flatlining on the ECG, but is continuing to have experiences. That's why a near-death experience plays an important part in my novel, because I think it brings this essential point very much home, that consciousness is an extremely mysterious phenomenon. And actually, our scientists know nothing about it. They even admit that. They call it the hard problem. They don't understand how these few pounds of jelly inside our skulls can render emotions, a sense of beauty, reactions to music or to great art, thoughts of love, just the day-to-day stuff of being a human being is completely unexplained by all science at the moment. So, I think we have to say that consciousness is one of the great mysteries, and we should not prematurely close our accounts with it, which is what Western science has done. And really, if we're going to learn about consciousness, we have to sit at the feet of the masters. And the masters are the shamans in tribal and hunter-gatherer societies. They have been working with the mystery of consciousness for thousands of years, and they've evolved a range of techniques to alter the wavelength, the receiver wavelength of consciousness, and allow us to pick up and connect with and make a direct connection with other realms that are not normally accessible to our day-to-day material senses. This is a technology. It's a spiritual technology. And if we want to go further down the road and actually not get stuck forever in our reliance on material and physical technology, then we're going to have to listen to what the shamans have to teach us.
It would be interesting to see what would happen if a bunch of modern day humans where all their technology were taken away and they were just planted out in a wonderful place like you are at right now at this moment and see what they would do. That would be a great reality show. We should think about that.
Yeah.
Remote viewing and out of body experiences. Now, I have done some research on my own into these different topics, and I'm curious because sometimes people come at them in more of a scientific approach with certain protocols and it has to be done this way. And then when you look at what shamans do and people who have these kind of experiences, it's really the same thing, but the protocol is different. One seems to be more indigenously connected to heart and the reality that consciousness is alive and living. And sometimes remote viewing and out-of-body experiences can be taught as more of like a simple 1, 2, 3 kind of step. I don't know. Maybe I'm not explaining that right, but
well, I think these skills. I think these skills can be taught. I think they're innate in all humans. Nature has mysteriously provided us with a number of plant allies that will help us to tune down our focus on the material realm and tune up our focus on non-material, non-physical realms, which shamans call the spirit worlds, and which quantum physicists, as I said earlier, call parallel dimensions or parallel realms. I don't see the difference between the two. And when you talk of remote viewing, for example, or out-of-body experiences, these are normal experiences for shamans in their practice in altered states of consciousness. And the key, actually, to shamanism all over the world is altered states of consciousness. These experiences are very commonly reported by shamans in the alert problem-solving state of consciousness. You will never, no one ever can, it's just not possible, you will not have a direct experience of the divine ground of all being. Somehow you have to tune down the material realm to gain access to that. I'm not saying it always has to be done with visionary plants. There are many, many other techniques that also open up this hidden doorway inside our minds through which we can project our consciousness through into other dimensions, rhythmic dancing, certain kinds of music, meditation, fasting, even hypnosis. There are a whole range of techniques, electromagnetic fields that can be helpful in bringing about these changes. But we in the West, we are amateurs. We are truly children in this exploration. We've bound ourselves for so long to the material realm that we've forgotten how to access realms of spirit. We've handed over the responsibility to the mainstream religions. You know, one says, well, I'm a Christian, or I'm a Jew, or I'm a Muslim. But one is most often not really having experiences of contact with the supernatural. One is being handed a body of dogma which has been generated by in previous centuries, and simply told this is true and told to believe it. The big difference with shamanism is that they are getting to grips day to day with what we would call, for want of another word, supernatural realms.
Do you think that it's been purposely done? Do you think that, or it just has been an evolution of a materialistic culture where indigenous cultures, shamanic cultures have just been kind of, in some cases, wiped out, completely targeted and, wiped out as a culture, and some just, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it has been purposely done, and that's also, I've come to understand one of the reasons why Entangled is ultimately a story of a battle of good against evil, because I personally have no doubt, and I share this view with shamans I've talked with, that whether we like it or not, we living in this material plane as physical beings on planet Earth are connected with spirit realms. That they interpenetrate our level of reality all the time, that they're all around us, but that our focus is so much on the material realm that often we're completely unaware of this connection. But whether we like it or not, the connection is there, and the connection is influencing what we do, and therefore the best thing we can do is to be proactive. To get to grips with the supernatural and deal with it on an equal basis, which is what shamans are all about. And I would say, and I take guidance for example, from the Gnostic texts, from the Nag Hammadi texts that were suppressed during the early centuries of Christianity, buried in a pottery jar deep in the earth at Nag Hammadi in Upper Egypt in the 3rd or 4th century, and recovered again in the 1940s and translated. These amazing texts, which mainstream Christianity so viciously suppressed, so many burnings at the stake, so many murders of so-called heretics. These incredible texts tell us that mankind is the fulcrum of a cosmic struggle between the forces of light and the forces of darkness, and that actually the choices that we make may have an effect that rings out across the universe, may not be confined simply to our beautiful planet, but may continue far beyond the bounds of our planet. So by making the wrong choices, by being misled by supernatural forces, this is how the Gnostic texts see it, we are empowering the darkness, and that's why it becomes vital to regain possession of our own consciousness, to wrest it away from the dark forces that are seeking in our society to send us to sleep. I mean, it's just clear that is happening, that what the powers that be, perhaps behind the scenes, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it's obvious that there's a strong investment in keeping the vast majority of humanity asleep, unaware and unable to connect with wider reality, to keep us as passive producers and consumers of material goods, to ensure that there is no political instability, to keep the rich rich and the poor poor. These mechanisms are at work in our society all the time, and we're discouraged from asking questions, and we're discouraged from exploring our own consciousness. I mean, this thing, the so-called war on drugs, and the way that these ancient psychedelic plants, which have been in use in human culture for tens of thousands of years, have been viciously suppressed by the powers that be in our governments. The fact that you can be sent to prison for decades for experimenting with psilocybin or with LSD or with DMT. This has now just come to be taken for granted in our society. As people don't even think about it anymore. It's just automatically the right thing to do. This is the prevailing view, to persecute so-called drug users. But just think about carefully what's going on. What is the most precious, the most intimate, the most personal part of ourselves as human beings if it is not our consciousness? And what kind of crazy world is it that we live in that does not allow us to be sovereign over our own consciousness and to make decisions as responsible adults about what we do and do not put into our bodies in order to explore our consciousness? I think it's an outrage against human rights that the state can be allowed to break into our homes, take away our liberty, destroy our lives and our reputation for doing what shamans have done for tens of thousands of years, personal exploration of consciousness in order to reach contact with the spirit realms. And I do think that a very dark force is lying behind that. Fortunately, it's good to see in recent years in America a number of very positive things have been happening. Some of the syncretic churches from Brazil, the Santo Daime, for example, and the União de Vegetal, who mix ayahuasca with elements of Christianity, who use ayahuasca as their sacrament, they've taken their case to the Supreme Court in the United States. And the Supreme Court has ruled in their favor. Despite the DMT content of ayahuasca being a Schedule I drug, members of the União de Vegetal and of the Santo Daime are allowed to drink ayahuasca legally in this country in at least 3 states, in New Mexico, in California, and in Oregon. And these struggles to get recognition for the right of adults responsibly to explore their consciousness with an ancient and sacred sacrament is continuing, and it's amazing the progress that has been made. And look at the new research that's now being done into formerly despised psychedelics, for example, mild psychedelics, for example, MDMA, ecstasy, now being used with incredible success to relieve veterans suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, to relieve them of their symptoms and to return them to a state of balance. psilocybin being used in hospitals administered to those with terminal cancer, again helping them to come to terms with the awful death that they confront and to place it in a deep spiritual context. So I would say that the movement is underfoot to recognize again the role that shamanistic techniques and these ancient sacred visionary plants can have in healing us as individuals and in healing our society, that there can be an awakening here, that we can perhaps move forward to the next stage of development of the human race if we don't stay completely stuck in the technical material paradigm and do take command of our own consciousness again. So for me, this is a very important point. If I'm not sovereign over my own consciousness, then I'm not sovereign over anything. And it's absurd that my society should tell me that it's going to go around the world imposing democracy on people when it doesn't even allow me, as a responsible adult, to explore my own consciousness in the privacy of my own home. Of course, if under the influence of these plants and substances we cause disruption or chaos, we get in the faces of other people, we damage or harm other people, then the state has a role, just as it does with drunk drivers on alcohol. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, in the privacy of our own homes, frankly speaking, it's an abuse of human rights for the state even to claim the right to patrol our consciousness.
I wish I had an applause button because I would be playing it right now. A question. I know I'm going to get emails on this, and I have had a couple questions submitted online as you were talking about the right way to work with ayahuasca and other power plants. In some cultures, it's an apprenticeship that you have to do for a few years to even be able to work or be able to initiate other people or to work that. How has that been in your experience, and what would you recommend to somebody who is listening who says, "Oh, I have to go do this"? What is the safe way and what is the appropriate way to work with these power plants?
I believe the most appropriate way, which is not available to everyone, is to go down to the Amazon, to Brazil, to Peru, to Ecuador, to countries surrounding the Amazon basin, and work with the very experienced shamans and churches that have been using ayahuasca responsibly for a very long time. They absolutely know what they're doing, and they can provide a very safe and secure setting. And also, by the way, a legal setting, because ayahuasca is not illegal anywhere throughout South America. The governments of South America have taken a stand on this. They say that this is a human right, that it's an ancient tradition in their country, and they've refused to bow to pressure from the United States government to make these sacred plants illegal. So one immediately is relieved of the fear of a prison sentence when you go to drink ayahuasca in Peru or Brazil.
So let me get this straight. So the United States is trying to tell South American countries that it's illegal to do this, and they're trying to stop them from letting people experience this?
Absolutely. There's been enormous pressure from the United States, backed up with muscle, because the United States can withdraw aid to governments that don't do what they're told, to stop the use of ayahuasca throughout the Amazon. And it's courageous of the South American governments to have taken this stance and to resist it and to defend their own independence and integrity in this way. So this is where we can really go to learn, but there are many shamans now, Western shamans, who've spent their apprenticeship in the Amazon, who've sometimes spent years down there working with indigenous shamans, who are now offering ayahuasca throughout the West. And I think that it was something else that I'd like to just mention. And I know you might want to hit the pause button again. I don't think they'll be able to stop talking tonight. There's something else that I want to just mention for those who understandably think ayahuasca equals drug equals bad, is to remember that ayahuasca is being used with fantastic success in a number of clinics around the world. For example, at the clinic called Taquihuasi in Peru, which is run by a French doctor called Jacques Mabit. They are bringing heroin and cocaine addicts over to that clinic. They are giving them 12 doses of ayahuasca, 12 sessions of ayahuasca over a period of a month. And huge numbers of them are coming back completely free of addiction to heroin and cocaine. So ayahuasca and other power plants must never be confused with harmful and addictive narcotics and stimulants. On the contrary, they can be an agent of change in an individual's life, to get off the track of addiction and to find the reason why they fell into addiction in the first place, and to overcome it and to move on in their lives. Once again, in every sense, healing, positive, and worthwhile.
Graham, I have to ask you this question. Does ayahuasca help with the decalcification of the pineal gland? I know that we're exposed through fluoride and other agents that actually calcify and harden the pineal gland, which, in my opinion, and I don't know if this is a fact or not, but I feel that helps to cut off that connection to that higher sense of consciousness on some levels. And I'm curious if you feel that this plant, ayahuasca, actually helps to reverse that or to break through that and to help activate that gland, which is what some people call the third eye.
The third eye. That's a really good question and a really important question. Research in the United States by Dr. Rick Strassman, who's a psychiatrist at the University of New Mexico, with DMT and human volunteers back in the 90s, made some extraordinary breakthroughs. Rick is certain that the pineal gland is the organ in our bodies that produces DMT. Again, our listeners may not widely know this, but all of us as human beings already have DMT in our bodies. In a sense, we're all illegal already. And it's in our bloodstream, and it's in our cerebrospinal fluid, and it's in our urine, usually in subpsychedelic quantities. But it's been suggested that the visionary powers of the pineal gland may come from spontaneous overproduction of DMT at some points. And it's equally rightly been suggested, we can't prove it, that the calcification of the pineal gland in our society by all sorts of agencies that are put into our water supply and our diet may be systematically shutting us off from the wider reality that surrounds us, making us so hard-headed, so material in our outlook, and thus serving the interests of the vast economic forces that run our society. And yes, absolutely, ayahuasca liberates the visionary potential in human beings. After a while, you don't have to go drink ayahuasca in order to be able to get into visionary space. It seems to open that door and keep it open. And I wouldn't be surprised, the research is yet to be done, if it is at a physical level actually undoing the harm that's been done to our pineal glands, if it wasn't in fact decalcifying, as you rightly suggest, our pineal glands. And let's not forget that the pineal gland is or was originally in evolutionary older animals a sense organ with a lens, a cornea, and a retina. In humans, it's sunk deeper into the brain. It isn't light sensitive anymore, but I believe it's still a sense organ, and that DMT is the lens it applies to see into all those wider areas of reality that are not normally accessible to our material senses. It's our organ of the sixth sense, if you like.
Do you also feel that perhaps it's our gateway or doorway into time travel?
Yes, absolutely. And again, this brings me back to my novel Entangled, where the two young characters, Rhea in the Stone Age, Leone in the modern age, doing battle with this time-traveling demon, they are able to contact one another across the veil of time in altered states of consciousness. So I don't propose, any kind of time machine for the journeys that they make. But rather that the systematic inducement of altered states of consciousness, working with those who know what they are doing, could allow us to explore a vast spectrum of reality, including the mystery of time, including the ability to move back and forward in time, not physically, but out of our bodies. That this is the most likely way that this is going to happen. Again, let's let go our attachment to technology and forget about machines. It's the mystery of human consciousness that is going to allow us to travel through time and perhaps to influence the past as well as the future.
For those of you who are interested in listening and who would like more information about Graham's work, you can go to his website, grahamhancock.com. There is a link on our Achieve Radio homepage, as well as my website, hillaryraimo.com. And Graham, we have a few minutes left in the show, and what I'd like to ask, and what I do ask most of my guests who come on, is what is your personal hope and message for humanity at this particular time?
My personal hope and message for humanity. Thank you for asking that. I feel very strongly that we must regain sovereignty over our own consciousness. We have to recognize that is the most fundamental and most precious part of ourselves. And we have to say, my consciousness is mine, and it's my inner sanctum. It's my sacred place. Nobody has the right to tell me what to do with that. You know, we're living in some ways in very dark times. The notion of demonic forces at work in the world that I explore in Entangled is very real. You just need to look around at the fear and the hatred that are being generated, at the suspicion of other peoples and other cultures and other religion, at the very quick resort to military solutions to all problems rather than talking them through with fellow human beings and try to figure them out, at the grievous and grotesque destruction of the environment that is taking place right now. Look what's happening to the sacred forest of the Amazon. The destruction that's taking place there could only be the work of a demonic force. We have to resist these forces. As individuals, we have to recognize that, yes, perhaps we can't change society as a whole, but we can change our own behavior. And we can change the way we react and are and behave towards others around us. And we can do so consciously, with positive intent, with love, because it's love that is most missing from our sorry human world today. Restore love, restore spirit, regain sovereignty over our own consciousness. And I believe we have fantastic hope for the future, a wonderful hope. We don't have to step off the edge of the abyss. We don't have to continue further down the dark path of ecological and human destruction that we've been on for so long. We can take a new direction, and I think that new direction may be much closer than we would imagine if we listened only to 24-hour rolling news.
I just want to mention, thank you for that, Graham. I just want to mention to everybody listening, Graham will be available for a lecture and signing at the Alignment Center in New York City on Wednesday, October 20th. He will also be in Breathe Books events with Daniel Pinchback in Baltimore, Maryland on the 22nd. And Kingston, New York on the 23rd. He will be at Beehive Lecture for a book signing. So you have a bunch of wonderful opportunities, and I hope you get a chance to attend one of those things. Thank you so much for joining me, Graham. It's been a pleasure. And for everybody who's joined me and listened for this hour, thank you so much for tuning in.